And now I would like to welcome our psychologist, Maria Andreoli, to the show. Maria, good morning to you. It's great to have you with us this week again.
Good morning, and it's great to be back on here.
That's great. Maria, you mentioned that you wanted to start a conversation series on neurodivergence, which I think is a fascinating topic. Can we start about what is neurodivergence? This is a fairly recently coined term, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely showing a lot more popularity. A lot more people are talking about it. But basically, for anyone listening who hasn't heard of it before, neurodivergent just means a person whose brain kind of works differently from what's considered typical. So it's not about being less than, it's about being different. And some pretty common kind of conditions that we hear that kind of fall in this category are, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette's, and more. But those are just some of the main ones of what we would consider neurodivergence.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about, so you're talking about ADHD, you're talking about Asperger's syndrome, dyslexia. Can you explain to us what each one of these terms mean? What is ADHD exactly?
Yeah, so ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So this is when we have some challenges with either struggling to be able to pay attention or struggling with just bigger levels of hyperactivity, right? Autism is different. This is when we kind of maybe struggle with, some social challenges, or we have kind of very repetitive or rigid tendencies. And dyslexia is just basically a learning disability in reading. So those are the three, main ones there. And, I think we often focus on the challenges of some of these conditions though, but I'm actually very interested in the strengths that come with these brain differences as well.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I remember reading, particularly in the past few years, that a lot of really well-accomplished people, particularly entrepreneurs, they had either ADHD themselves or autism. I think that even Elon Musk, I can be adding into that list here. So people that are neurodivergent can actually make huge contributions to the world. Can you tell us a little bit about the flip side? Because there are the challenges. What are the strengths, and can we observe these strengths in every case? How does it work?
Yeah, it's an absolutely fascinating topic. And the amazing thing about the brain is that when it struggles in one specific area, it usually almost always compensates by strengthening another area. And this isn't just for neurodivergent people. This is for everyone. When we have a challenge in one area, it's extra strength is given to another ability. So for ADHD, whilst these people might struggle with attention, it's pretty common that they also have higher levels of creativity and more innovative thinking as well. And people with autism, and you're right, Elon Musk has said that he has autism, these people may struggle with recognizing social cues and skills, but they usually have this awesome ability to recognize patterns, this awesome attention to detail, and tend to be pretty honest as well. Not in every case, but really often. And people with dyslexia, while they may struggle with reading, words and being able to read the text, they usually have really incredible spatial reasoning and just big picture problem solving, which I think is really awesome.
Well, very interesting. So in regards to ADHD, tell us a little bit about these things. So ADHD is what people normally say about it, or at least the common knowledge out there is that if you have ADHD, it means that you can't really hold your focus to, for a certain amount of time. But I also heard about people with ADHD having the exact opposite of having hyperfocus. When they find something that perhaps is interesting for them, they can actually really get into this flow of hyperfocus. Is that related to ADHD? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Is this a misconception? What is it?
No, you're on the right track there. So whilst they haven't been able to find a single gene for ADHD, they have found that it's related to a cluster of genes. And these genes are tied to traits such as novelty seeking, right? So like looking for new things, looking for the next exciting big thing. So people with ADHD are like really driven by this novelty seeking. They're really driven by, dopamine and, things that are exciting or different. So, they may kind of like tune out when it comes to like, the everyday conversations, but it's pretty common that when they find something that really piques their interests, like they have this amazing ability to just like fully narrow in and just like go all in. And I think that's a lot of like passion that we can see coming out with people who have ADHD. Hence why so many like, famous people or people with like big ideas also tend to have ADHD as well.
Oh, very, very interesting. So there is so people with ADHD, depending on the topic, they can really grasp their interest and their attention, depending what it is.
Absolutely.
So Maria, I have a question here. Okay. Maybe it's a bit of, I have heard people saying that, hey, people questioning, is this, because the diagnosis of ADHD has grown substantially over the past few years.
Yeah.
And I think we can always ask the question, is this being overdiagnosed, or is just because we haven't diagnosed before and now we're on the mark? But one of the things I have heard some parents saying is they're saying here, is this really ADHD, or is it because the child is being used to get to be on the screen for extended periods of time, and and they're just using that label to excuse bad behavior or bad parenting, so to speak?
I completely hear where you're coming from. And, this is something that we as psychologists, we have to be quite careful with because it's growing so much attention in the media. A lot of people are kind of self-diagnosing or just, thinking that their kids have ADHD as well. So there's definitely a process that we need to go through, because it's true that a lot of other conditions or situations can replicate what ADHD looks like. For example, a kid who has anxiety is going to struggle to pay attention simply because they're anxious. Doesn't mean it's ADHD. Or a kid who maybe isn't getting consistent boundaries at home is going to start having behavioral issues. That doesn't mean they have ADHD either. Or a kid who has trauma because they're constantly on alert, they are going to struggle to focus and be still. That doesn't mean they have ADHD. So part of the process for diagnoses is we do kind of have to look at the big picture, trace this kid across time, ask multiple people, make sure it's happening across environments, across time, and rule out other possible things that might be going on. And hence why, the assessment for ADHD, usually for me, I will do it in perhaps like 4 to 5 parts. Across time. So it has to be something that is done with caution. And we do need to be careful about not calling everything ADHD just because it is a buzzword at the moment.
That's very interesting.
So good question.
Yeah, it's interesting. So basically a lot of kids can display behaviors or symptoms that are similar to ADHD, but that does not mean that they have ADHD. What is the connection between, since we're in the ADHD realm still, is there any connection between ADHD and screen time for children, exposure to screens, particularly if it's unlimited or very poorly limited? Has there been, as far as your knowledge is concerned, is there any connection with that, or they are unrelated or uncorrelated matters as far as the science goes?
Well, as you know, with science is we get, we kind of have different research papers saying all sorts of different things, but like the general consensus at the moment across the research is no, screen time use cannot cause ADHD. Having said that, it seems to be that it can increase symptoms of ADHD. It can at times lead to some tendencies that look like ADHD. And I also find, because remember I said earlier that with ADHD, it's related to that novelty seeking and dopamine seeking, right? So if we've got these kids who are very much wired to get dopamine, they are going to be drawn to screens. And that's something that I find over and over again with my clients who have ADHD and my clients who have autism as well. The kids in particular are very drawn to screen time use, and they have a lot of challenges knowing when to stop. So it kind of goes both ways. But yeah, like just to answer, general consensus is no, screen time use will not cause ADHD.
Okay, but there is a connection there in terms of
there is a connection.
So
yeah.
Maria, when should a parent be concerned and try and seek further assessments to know if their child has ADHD or not? What symptoms should parents be on the lookout for? And when's the recommended time to say, you know what, let's have a professional looking into this because it's going to be better this way. What's your counsel on this regard?
Well, ADHD, it's attention or hyperactivity. It doesn't have to be both. It can also be one or the other. There's different types, right? I guess let's start with hyperactivity. All kids, when they're young, are hyperactive. This is normal part of brain development. They are the reason for this being is that they need to explore the world. They need to discover the world because they're new in the world. So, God amazingly wired them to be a little bit hyperactive, to just go out in this crazy exploration phase. But at some point, that is expected that it will scale back. Mm-hmm. The kid will eventually, as they go into school years, be able to start, sitting down a little bit longer, being seated a little bit longer, enough to focus and enough to learn as they get older, as they maybe start reaching about like maybe year 2, I think roughly around that time. Mm-hmm. And that's hyperactivity. You'd expect that. And with attention, all kids, we all daydream a lot. Mm-hmm. But when it's getting to that point where it's starting to cause problems, I think that's what you're really looking for. Because all kids are a little hyperactive at times, struggle to pay attention at times. Mm-hmm. But if it's getting to that point where it's causing challenges, teachers are starting to raise concerns, it's affecting their learning, or, if their behaviors are so extreme that it's affecting their friendships, it's affecting their ability to like hold friends, their ability to just get day-to-day tasks done, their ability to just follow basic morning routines or nighttime routines, that's probably the point where you want to look into it a little bit more.
Very interesting. Maria, thank you so much. Our time went by so fast, but we cannot wait to continue this exploration on neurodivergence. And of course, if you have any questions for Maria, text us to 0491 064 669 and we will pass that along to her. She will be with us every Wednesday at about 7:35 a.m. here on Faith FM on The Breakfast Show. Maria, thank you so very much for sharing with us your knowledge, your experience, and we cannot wait to continue that conversation with you. It's such a relevant topic.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.